Hi guys, so this is overdue now, but I still, before this class officially ended, just wanted to do a quick demo for you guys about saturation and desaturation using color complements. So I will show you how that works. First using red and green, and then if there's time, I'll go through the other two as well. So if you remember the color wheel includes complementary colors, which are two colors across from one another on the wheel, and those complement pairs are red and green, blue and orange, and yellow and violet. When we put them next to each other, they each emphasize the other. They create a contrast that makes each color more powerful. It makes it, the colors each optically pop more when they're next to each other. The other effect is that when we mix them with one another, they get less intense. So next to each other, unmixed, they become visually more intense. When we do literally mix the pigments together, they become less intense. So again, as a refresher on some vocabulary, saturation is the intensity of a color. A color at full saturation has not been mixed with anything else. It is at maximum strength. So that might be very bright, or that might just be a very pure, unadulterated color. Desaturation is the process of a color becoming more and more dull. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, if you're trying to paint something that's in shadow, you are going to want those colors to be desaturated to create a convincing space, to create convincing light. A lot of very calm and peaceful moments in paintings can only be achieved through desaturated color that's less jarring and intense. And sometimes we want to desaturate color just to get something closer and more accurate to what it looks like in real life, right? More often than not, the paint straight out of the tube is not going to be exactly the color that we are aiming for. So desaturating can help us really kind of modulate colors to a pretty precise degree. So, so to start, so we have this red. This is cadmium red light. And so this is a very saturated color. It's saturated in the sense that I haven't mixed it with anything, but it's also just, it's really bright. So that's going to just be the pure color. And then here I have cadmium green. And I'm just going to start by mixing a tiny bit of green into it. Make sure that this is visible. Yeah. It was a little bit, I think I need a little bit more so you can really see the difference. So now we can see this is becoming a little bit more brown. Maybe a little closer to a color like burnt sienna, you know, sort of a dark orange looking color. But this is a color that, you know, you would maybe want to use for sure if you're painting in the landscape. This is a great earth tone. It's a color that I would probably use for hair. So that's example number one. We've desaturated red with a little bit of green. And now we can look at the reverse. Which is what happens when we bring a little bit of red into this very bright green. And so these are both cadmiums. They're colors that they're paints where the pigment that gives them their color comes from the mineral cadmium. And that creates, that's a pigment that creates very bright colors. Obviously, if you go to Blick or wherever you get paints, not all reds or greens are going to immediately be this bright out of the tube, but these were good ones to work with, I think, because they already start out so bright. So we can see a similar thing happening. This green becomes a little bit darker, maybe more like grassy, more mossy. And so this is another, you know, I would for sure use this for grass in shadow. This is a color that we see, you know, it's easy to imagine this in clothing. It's easy to imagine this being in somebody's eye color. And so seeing this can also just help us understand how whatever colors we have at our disposal to paint something, we have a pretty wide range that we can get from a small number of paint tubes just by modifying the colors by mixing them with their complements. So I'll show you what happens when you mix exactly half and half. Great, so now we can see we have this brown color. This is a pretty straightforward warm brown. You know, this is a color that would be great for hair or fur. It would be great for painting wood, you know, if you're painting an interior scene. You can for sure get certain wood tones with that, whatever, any of these things. The other main benefit, aside from being able to get a wide and nuanced range of color by mixing complements or by desaturating with complements, is that it also takes away our need for using paints that already come in neutral colors. Like the browns and grays that you can get from mixing complementary colors are so much more vibrant than what you're going to get if you just get a tube of burnt sienna. So I lost my audio for this part, but I am moving on from here, going to show you the mixtures that we get when we mix the other two pairs of complements, first blue and orange, and then yellow and violet. So these are our blue and orange combinations, desaturated versions. And so we can see that, they have the same, it has the same desaturating effect when we mix these two colors, but obviously the neutral that we get from mixing them is a little bit different, right? Red and green gave us this kind of warm, orangey earth tone, whereas blue and orange is giving us colors that are a little more green. So that is kind of neither here nor there. It's more than anything just kind of learning what you can expect when you mix certain colors, but it also shows us that that certain complement pairs are going to be better for mixing depending on what kind of outcome you're trying to get or what the subject is that you're painting. So I will do purple and yellow last, and I will check back in at the end. All right, so down here in the bottom left, you can see the saturation ranges that I just mixed with red and green and with blue and orange. And now I'm going to do the last complement pair, which is purple and yellow. All right, so there you go. I put these all in one place and I'm turning this around so that you can see it more clearly. But so that's just an overview of what we can, of how, desaturating colors by mixing them with their complement works. We can see how we, went from this bright red to this more kind of deeper, darker, more muted red to a true neutral brown by just mixing it with green, with its complement. And the same was true in reverse, right? We went from this very bright green to a sort of darker grassy color, and then to a true brown. So obviously there are many steps in between each of these colors that we can get in the same way as we've done with our other color mixing exercises. We can, keep making subtler and subtler changes between each color to get a total gradient. But obviously for our purposes today, I think that this is sufficient to illustrate the concept. So I hope that this is useful, and then it obviously also goes without saying, but that you can mix any of these colors with white or black to get a broader value range within any one of these given combinations. And then you also will find through your own experimentation that this is sort of the broad framework of what you can expect from mixing each pair of complements, in the sense that, red and green will give you this sort of warm brown, blue and orange will give you something a little bit more green, and purple and yellow I've heard described, it looks very similar to the blue and orange combination that I've gotten here in this lighting, but I've heard the purple and yellow neutral described as kind of a mushroomy gray, which I think is an accurate way to describe it. So, you know, those are kind of the general directions that mixing any of these pairs of complements will go, but it obviously will also change depending on which pigments you're using. You know, if you're using a red that's not this bright red, but rather maybe you're using an alizarin crimson or something, which is a dark red color, that's still going to take you in this direction, but it's going to give you a darker set of colors, a colder set of colors, etc. So that's the kind of thing that is really important and really fun to mess with on your own and see where it takes you. But this is hopefully a map that you can use for when you do that. So I will talk to you all soon, and I hope that this is helpful. And please, as always, reach out if you have any questions, things that you're still not clear about with this stuff, or just things that you're curious to know. All right, talk later.